with kids and stuff, like peer pressure, like I don't know, I just always feel like, how are you gonna tell me what to do when we're the same age? Like, does that even make sense? Hi everyone, welcome to our Wednesday teaching. We are going to start our journey series, and this is going to be part 1, and it's called the identifier. So I am so excited for this new series. If you see me looking down, I'm looking at my notes just to make sure that I don't forget anything or to mention anything with the series. So the Journey to Modesty series is just a beginner series. It has 5 sessions or 5 parts to where we'll kind of dive deep into how to begin your journey to modesty. It's going to look different for everyone, and so each session will have just some prompts and questions for you to kind of dive deeper. And so this is what the first session is really a deep dive into who you are. So it's called the identifier, and it's also going to be a lot of introspection of like who you are, what you like, what you don't like about yourself. I'm not going to even get into all the prompts yet because like you'll see, but I am going to just go ahead and share this live, but I'm just so excited. This is gonna be exciting. We are going to do the journey series once a month, so once every month we'll tackle a new or the next step. So this month of January we're going to tackle the identifying, the introspection step, and then in February we'll go into part 2 and what part 2 is. So this is going to be fun. I have done this, but I will do this along with everyone that wants to do this. Now you're open to do this. You can do it at your own time, at your own pace, however long it takes you. So even if we go to the next step or the next phase and you're not ready, like you are free to like stay on the step and stage that you are until you feel like you're ready to go to that next or that second or third or fourth or fifth part. The pace is solely up to you and however slow you want to go. I don't recommend going by fast because this is really important, and every section builds on the next, and so you really want to take your time when you're doing each session and really think about the prompts and really take time to think about and kind of sit with it and write some detailed answers, because you're gonna rely on that for the next part. So everything is gonna build off top of each other. So if you could just give me 1 minute, I am going to share this live on my personal page. And yeah, then we can get started. So just 1 minute. Alrighty. Okay, so also before we begin, I just want to give a PSA for the live teachings, because I think that's important to kind of mention some of these things before we even get started, just so that there's more clarity on what these live teachings are for. So the first PSA is really going to be the purpose of this social media in general. It's really because I have a mixed audience. There are like variety of people in different places, spaces, and then also just professional fields. And so I also do have a mix of people who have different religious backgrounds and faiths and beliefs and things like that. And so because there's such a mixture, I want to make sure that there's clarity across the board on like what we stand for, what we do, just so that you can make the decision if this is an alignment for you, and then also so that you just have clarity on like where not only me as the owner, where I stand, but then also where the business stands. And then also the purpose of this is because it's also a business, and so this has to do with marketing, and so this is our marketing strategy. So I know that with most fashion brands, you're going to see clothes and beautiful editorial pictures and all of these things, right, that entice you. However, we don't have that yet. We are still building all of that out. And so as we're building it out, we still need to have community and have engagement and an awareness of our brand, who we are, what we stand for, and things like that. And so these live teachings is a part of a marketing strategy. So throughout the week, there will be content posted. There's a theme for each week, right? And then there will be content posted that's in cohesive to that theme. And then the live teaching really kind of goes deeper into what's posted, the other forms of content that are posted. So this live teaching is really just to give you a more deeper, detailed time of discussion and engagement, but then also kind of just to go into the nitty-gritty of things. And so I wanted to be clear on that. Just to give a brief overview of my background. I have experience in administration, business. I have a bachelor's degree in business management. I also have an associate's in accounting. So I have experience in finance, business, very high level systems, structures, processes, and the back end of things. I am like, that's my sweet spot, is back end operations management, project management, and now even moving into like advocacy, policies, governance, initiatives, partnering with organizations, because I do have a consulting firm called Connect to Haven, so please follow. But in that consulting firm, we do racial justice and equity consulting in terms of business. And so I just want to give a brief background, because with these teachings, you will see a lot of reference in business, and it's all coming from a business perspective because that is my background. And so that's where I'm most well versed in, is business, and then how business relates to all the other things in life, and how also it's interconnected with fashion, things like that. Another thing to know about me is that I've always been very bold and courageous, and I stand up for what's right. I stand up for people. I say things that no one wants to say, and also do things that no one wants to do, especially when there's a fear around the fear of like there's a consequence, or there's a fear of retaliation. That kind of stuff does not stop me from saying or doing what needs to be said. And so with that, that ties into this business and also this brand and what we stand for, because a lot of businesses do not talk or focus on social issues, and they kind of stay out of it so that they don't get blackballed, things like that, and it doesn't affect their revenue. However, that's not what this business is for. That's not what this brand stands for. We believe in social issues and addressing and talking about social issues. And so that's also kind of how this live teaching came about, is being able to discuss deep and in detail these social issues and how it all interrelates and interconnects. Okay, so I just want to get into a few PSA teachings. I will actually have these in like separate, like a whole separate post that will be pinned along with the other featured content. So that's where you can always refer to it. So I'm not going to go so deep in detail, because there will be a separate post that has all of these PSAs for future reference. However, the weekly teachings will have a mixture of things and reference points. So it could be anything from politics, business, talking about structures, talking about anything behind the scenes, high level systems, things like that, fashion, life, and then also like my talks with God. And it's just a way to bring awareness or things to like the front of the conversation, especially things that have been shunned and or like pushed to the back burner. It's just bringing everything to the table and bringing awareness, and then also putting that perspective out there so that, one, you can assess where you need to continue to uphold your personal convictions or morals, or where you might need to update some things, or just, make decisions or make more sound decisions on certain things that might impact or have a direct impact on your life. The second is, this is not categorized as like a biblical teaching. So this will not replace like your Bible studies and your Sunday services. I just want to say that, because there will be scriptural reference from the Bible. And so with that, I want to be clear, and like, this is not like a substitute for your Sunday service. It's not a substitute for your Bible study. This is more in the context, again, of bringing awareness and having the deep dive conversations. And so I'll also be using different reference point from business, from governing, from governance terms, and also just other references and research. So I have researched all of this stuff. So I'm not just like turning on my camera and like, let's talk. Like, there's a little bit more structure to that, where they have things have been researched. And I do that to bring different reference points into the conversation for comprehension purposes. I totally understand that everyone has their own level of comprehension. And so in order to do that, and in order to kind of accommodate for the various levels of comprehension, I'm kind of bringing in different references, different viewpoints, different perspectives, all of those things, so that you're able to understand something. If you can't understand everything, at least you'll be able to understand from what's illustrated. Another PSA is just the purpose of these live teachings, again, is to have more deep conversation on the content that's posted throughout the week. Like, this is our time to have that conversation and to go deep, and as deep as the rabbit hole can go, you know, and also just bring awareness. And so wanting to reiterate that this is still our marketing strategy. So we are still a business, and this is still part of our marketing strategy. And so one of our mottos is redefining modesty. And so if we're going to redefine modesty, like, we have to figure out a way of doing that. It's not just also presenting clothes and images that people like. Like, no, it's actually saying like what that is. What perspectives, what views, like really bringing that to the forefront, and really talking about how we're redefining modesty, what that looks like. Because yeah, you gotta it has to be done. And if it has to be done, how is that done? What does that look like? And so this is what these live teachings give time for us to kind of debrief and really talk that through. Second to last PSA is that Keisha C is not a religious organization. It's a fashion brand. So I wanted to make that clear, because again, I do have mixed audiences, a mixed audience. And so we are not a religious organization. We are a fashion brand. We are a business. I just so happen, the owner happened to belong to a certain faith, right? And so wanting to give clarity on the context to reference that will happen with scripture. The Bible is a guide, right? And if you think about any other religious organizations, they all have their religious texts that they use as a guide and a reference point to reference back to when it comes to navigating life and their lifestyle. And so that's all that is for me. It's accountability, and then also to make sure that whatever I say has a reference point because of the faith that I'm tied to and believe in. So that's the clarity for that. Last is that everyone's welcome here. So you don't have to belong to a specific group, organization, faith. Like, you don't have to, you don't. You are welcomed here. Your opinions are welcome. Just be respectful. But then also, like, your questions are welcomed as well. Like, your curiosity is welcomed in learning about something you may not know, or that you may have heard, but are willing to take on a different perspective. And so really, all of this, the marketing, everything that we're doing, these live teachings, is really just showing you how we are putting modesty back in its rightful place in society. And so just wanted to give those quick PSAs again. There will be a separate post with these that go a little bit more in detail. However, I just wanted to do a quick PSA wrap up. And then some guarantees when it comes to these live teachings are that, one, I'm not going to throw the Bible at you. Like, the scriptures are just are references for me, holding myself accountable, right? And then also for those that might be in the same faith, that's for them to study and get their own understanding. Second, there will always be various forms and avenues for comprehension. And so based on research, I'll just pull different texts and different concepts so that it makes it more cohesive for you to understand and it's more universal. Third guarantee is that this is a no judgment zone. Like, judgment will not be passed here. So this is not to like demean you or berate you or make you feel less than or unworthy of. This is learning and this is a journey. And so if you're into taking a journey and into really learning, this is a space for you. And then last, you can always ask questions. Now I'll do my best to clarify and to really answer the question accordingly. However, if I'm unsure, or if maybe I'm not just answering the way you would like, I'll always refer you to someone so that you can get the answers that you need. Okay? So that's enough of the PSA. Let's get into the journey process. I'm just going to pull up my notes. Give me 1 minute. Okay. Okay, here we go. So when you think about a journey, right? So there's always going to be a starting point where you've already have kind of an idea of things. And so with this journey to modesty, you can really begin there's no specific starting point. Like, there's no specific thing that you need or that, that's important. Like, I think the only thing that's very important for the journey that you would need is just your participation, and active participation. I would say that's the only thing you'll need. Other than that, you can start anywhere. Like, anywhere that you're at in this time in your life is a perfect place to start. So I wanted to preface by saying that. But so in this introspection, I'm going to say some questions and have some prompts for you to really think about. Again, you can get your own journal. You can write these down, but really think about these questions. I will have these questions in the description for you to reference, but take your time thinking about them. I will give some elaboration on some of the questions just to give you some examples about like maybe how deep you should be thinking. But I always say the deeper you can really think and have time to reflect, the better. And writing it down, because this again part 2 will build on what you've listed in part 1, and so you want to be able to have something to work with, right? Okay, so the first question is, who are you? Who are you? So write down who you are. And that can be a range of things, but write down everything you think you are. And after you're done writing down everything that you think and that you have listed that this is who I am, you're going to answer the next question, which is, who do you answer to? So even if you're an adult, if you're a young adult or like a minor adolescent, you can say your parents. But however, I want you to think about like, who else do you answer to? And this could be in the context also of your job. There are people you might answer to at your house, and there's people you might answer to if you're in part of any organizations. Those are some people you might answer to. You want to write that down in that specific organization. So write down, I'll say like this, make a list. So write down the organization, section, or place. So if it's home, you'll say home, and you'll list who you answer to directly at home. If it's school, you'll list who you directly answer to at school. If it's another organization, sports, church, you'll list those authorities over you. But then I also want you just to list and put life, and think about like, who do you answer to in life in general? And not in the sense of like all of those people are like, yeah, I answer to all these people in my life. No. I'm talking about like life choices. And not necessarily life choices where there'll be consequences, right? But like, think about like, who do you answer to, or who do you give an account to when you're having to make decisions that maybe no one will know, the decision you made, or like who do you hold yourself accountable to? That's also could be like, who do you answer to? If you're part of a faith, you can put that down of like who you answer to. But just think about in life in general, when you're making decisions, or maybe even they're not necessarily decisions within the organizations and all the spaces that you've already answered, but just in general, like when you think about your day, when you think about also like how you show up every day, like who are you answering to when you show up the way you show up? Like, like what and who's holding you accountable? So that's how you answer that question. Okay, so the third question is, what do you like? What do you like? It could be food, it could be clothes, it could be activities, sports, it could be some interests that you might have, or hobbies. It could be certain people. Yeah, it can even be yourself. And then write down like, what do you like about yourself? And so when you answer that question, and I know that sometimes it might be hard because you're like, I don't know what I don't really like. That could be, you can write that down too. If you're like, I like, or you have a hard time liking certain things, and it might not be like at the level of like, but it could be like, I enjoy, because I know that some people, they have like more of a higher tolerance, or it just takes them longer to really like things or enjoy things. So, or like things, so they might enjoy it, but may not be something that they like, oh, I actually like this. If it's something like you may enjoy, that's okay to write that down too. Okay, and so then thinking about everything you listed in the what do you like section, the next prompt has two separate questions. So the first question is going to be, how do you feel? Now, you can answer this based on what you've mentioned in the previous question of like, what do you like, and like, how does that make you feel? However, that's going to be the next question. So if you're like, I don't know how I feel, or I don't feel anything, write that down. So you can say, I don't feel anything for that question. So this is question 4, part A. How do you feel? It could be in this moment, like today. It could be, the day that you hear this and come across this. It could also be your like the season. If you categorize like quarterly and seasons, it could be that, like in this season or in this quarter, I feel this. It could also be by month. Yeah, so just, how do you feel? And then part B to this prompt is going to be, how does what you like, which is listed in the third question that we've covered, how does what you like make you feel? So there's a number of ways you can do this. So depending on how big or small your list is of what you liked in the third prompt, you can, by each thing that you like, you can write a feeling or write several. You can kind of group them and have them grouped and then write the overall feeling for what you have grouped. Yeah. So how does what you like, so the things that you've listed you like, and also if you've listed things that you really like about yourself, your body, your personality, in prompt 3, it is good for you to actually list how does that make you feel. So that'll be good too, because that'll be very helpful for part 2. Okay, now this is going to be the last prompt. And then this prompt has, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this prompt has 5 questions within it. Okay, so the first question, so A, is going to be, when do you feel like your most authentic self? When do you feel like your most authentic self? And that could be a time, that could be a season, that could be anything. So when do you really feel like your most authentic self? I know a lot of people that are introverts, they usually say, like, when I'm by myself, that's when I feel like my most authentic self. Other people, maybe they're extroverts, when they're around other people, that's when they're most authentic self. Some people, when they're, doing maybe a hobby or what they love, that's the time where they feel like their most authentic self. So yeah, when do you feel like your most authentic self? So now that you've got that figured out, now if you don't know, that's okay to leave that blank, but now that you got that figured out, then part B of this 5th prompt, so this next question, is going to be, do you like yourself when you are stripped? Now let me explain the strip part. So just think about if you were stripped completely bare. We could say naked, but just bare as in like there's so we'll start naked, right? So stripped bare as in like, do you like your physical self when you're stripped naked, right? You were stripped from all your clothes and you're standing in your birthday suit. Do you like yourself when there's nothing covering, nothing holding anything up, nothing, constricting, tucking anything in? Like, do you like yourself? Okay. Now that we've had that figured out, do you like yourself when you're stripped of your masks? And mask meaning like, sometimes like you'll mask your personality, or, when you're around certain people or in certain organizations or in certain groups, you wear almost a mask. Again, going back to like your most authentic self, and what you've answered in that first prompt. Do you like when you're stripped of that? So if you were stripped of that, stripped of all your masks, and you had to show up as your most authentic self 24/7, like, would you like that? How would that make you feel? Do you like yourself 100% of the time? Okay, so then part C prompt is going to be, what do you reject about yourself? So we've kind of identified the moment you feel like your most authentic self. And then the second prompt was you identifying if you like yourself. One, if you were stripped completely naked, like you would love yourself in the way you look from head to toe. And then the caveat to that would also be like if you were stripped of your mask, stripped of the things that you use to kind of cover and hide yourself. That could be personality, that could be all the other inner things, right? Because this is all introspection, so it's all inside here, in here. Now, write down the things that you reject when it comes to yourself. And feel free to like sit with this. You might even have to like pause these videos with each prompt, and that's okay. But like really sit with this about like, what do you most reject about yourself? And this can be physical, it can be mental, it can be emotional. It could be like even in terms of like career and school, because I know sometimes, you know, when you're juggling certain things, like you might show up one way at school than you do at, so it's okay that you might, you know, there might be some common themes about what you might reject of yourself or hold back, depending on how you're navigating, you know, where you're at. Okay, so now that we have identified the things that you reject about yourself, now the things that you reject, I want you to list why you don't like it. Like, why don't you like it? Like, why do you reject those things about yourself? What makes you, under everyone, what makes you not like it? To where you feel like you reject it, you like, you don't want this a part of you. Yeah, like, why don't you like it? And in this answer, it's okay to be like, be as vulnerable, be as vulnerable as possible, because you really want, really want to get to the deep part of it. So why don't you like the things that you reject about yourself? What makes it something you don't like? What makes it something that you hide, or what makes it something that you feel, you know, not good about, that you know, have that like, I just don't, you know how we get sometimes. It's just like, I just don't like that. What makes you feel that way? And why do you feel that way? Okay. Also, now that we've identified why you don't like it, now the next question is, was the thing that you've rejected, the things that you've rejected about yourself, and the reason you don't like it, was this influenced by society? Was it influenced by society? And society could just be anything. It could be family, it could be friends, it could be school. Because, you know, like elementary, middle school, especially high school, kids were cruel. So it could be some of the things that, you know, you might have been bullied from in school. And that has influenced the way you look at yourself, or look at the things about yourself and your personality. And some of those things you might reject because that influence, or like the trauma you experienced in high school or in middle school if you had a bully. It could be family, because family, sometimes they just be doing too much. Also, it could be at work if, you know, there's, you know, you just have certain things about you. And people say quirks, but I don't view them as that. But other people might not like it. And it's not necessarily that there's anything wrong with you. It's just that person or your boss or someone might have an issue with it. So are the things that you reject about yourself and what you don't like about them, like the reasoning of why you don't like them and why you reject them, was it influenced by society? You can answer this yes or no for each, or however long your list is, and then put why. And I can, as you're writing this, I can even give you an example. So, I don't think I would say we weren't really bullied growing up. I mean, we were bullied when we moved here. Like, we had it pretty rough moving from Memphis as a kid. I was like 6.5, getting ready to turn 7. And we was bullied, but it wasn't even bullied in the fact of like, it was more so of like, I don't know why people just wanted to feel like they, like had authority over us, or wanted to show us like, You know what I mean? Like, you don't run anything here, which we weren't even trying to run anything. Like, we were like in culture shock because it was like coming from Memphis and moving up here to Washington was a big culture shock. Not only just seeing as many other people of color, but also like the weather. Like, it was just a lot. So necessarily, like, the bullying was more so of like, you know, people trying to assert their authority. So like, we had to fight a lot growing up. And then like my older sister, she was bullied a lot, especially in church. And so we always had to, like, you know, fight on her behalf and take up for her. So yeah, and in that they would say things about us that weren't nice, but also like, you don't even know me. Another thing I could think about in terms, especially if someone's like, oh, you might be straddling the fence on whether you want to put like aspects of like your body image and how you view your body. I will give an example for that. So growing up, I was told, I can laugh about it now, and I actually laughed about it then because I was just like, again, like, who are you? Like, what are you talking about? But growing up, I was told that, like, oh, you're not black, like, you're not a black girl because my lips weren't like big, like my lips were small. So like, you know, most of the girls growing up, they had more fuller lips than me. And so I guess their way of like, I don't know, girls are weird sometimes. But their way of, I guess, trying to like hurt my self-esteem was telling me that I'm not black because I don't have as big as lips as them. So that was something that, one, I heard it at a very young age, so I really didn't understand. And then two, I think because it was echoed by adults, because with kids and stuff, like peer pressure, like I don't know, I just always feel like, how are you gonna tell me what to do when we're the same age? Like, does that even make sense? No. So that's how I felt when peer pressure came. So peer pressure didn't have anything, like, it didn't have an impact on me. But I think, like, so had they just said that and it was left there, but I think because it was echoed by like adults, when I say adults, I mean like grown women, because when those statements were echoed by adults, then it was just like, you know, and in that time, and mind you, I'm 33, so I grew up in like, you know, the the 90s and early 2000s, and so it was a different culture back then. And I'm saying back then like it was so far away, which it wasn't, but it was definitely a different culture. Like, they allowed bullying to the highest degree because they felt like it made you stronger, it built character, and so then also adults will bully you. Like, it was just a thing. I don't know why they made that a thing, but it was a thing. And so I think had that statement not been echoed by adults who, like, at that time, like, adults were the authority. Like, they know better, they do better, which that wasn't really the case. So it was like, oh, well, if an adult says it, then that means you're, you know. So I guess I took like, oh, if adults are saying it to me, then, and adult women, I'm guessing that means that's true. So for a while, I would say, yeah, I think for a while, I think like end of middle school, all throughout high school, for a while, I did have a complex about my lips. But and even like, girl, and I'm like, lip filler is like so common today, but back in those times, some people had it, but it really wasn't as common as it is now. But I'm trying to think. I think like maybe early college days, like, and maybe a little bit after. I think I contemplated lip filler a little bit after I graduated college. It was for a very short time. But I had that complex about myself. I had already had a complex about my eyebrows because my eyebrows are the same color as my skin. So like, technically, when I was a baby, I was born without eyebrows. Like, there was no eyebrow, there was no hair, there was nothing. Like, it was just like a light, like, blonde area where you saw, like, that's where the eyebrow hair is supposed to be. So I think those two were the only, like, well, there were some other body complexes, but those were only two, like, really things that were kind of engraved in my head, because yeah, they would say like, oh, you don't have any eyebrows, and then you don't have any lips, so you're not a black girl at all. And I think because, again, like, the adult women would say it too, and it was like, oh, I guess I'm not. Which is so crazy to think about right now. And I can honestly laugh about it because it's crazy. And yeah, I think about even as an adult, like, I just never had an issue though. Like, it never was like, oh, you have smaller lips, so you're not attractive. Like, that was never a thing. So in my head, I think I wrestled with it, because it was like, well, I'm not dating you, and like, the men have no issue with me having small lips. Like, you know what I mean? Like, my roster is still long, so explain to me. And I don't know, I think I just eventually just grew out of it. I can't tell you what I did, what I said. I probably gave myself a pep talk, but I can't, yeah, but I honestly grew out of it. So, yeah, I think that's my story. That's my story of what I can think of off the top of my head. But I know that there's other struggles, because I feel like also another story, a quick story about that and what might be influenced by society is body image, because growing up in the Northwest, but okay, so being raised in the South and then moving to the Northwest to be raised for like the rest of my life, right? Or up until adulthood. I grew into my body at a very young age. So by 6th grade, like, it was like that summer over 6th grade, like my body turned into a whole grown woman. And so I think for women, and I think probably a lot of women who see this video, like, that's probably the first thing they think about, is just their body being objectified and also being sexualized at a very young age. Can definitely have an influence on how you view yourself and your body, which is brought on by society. And at that time, especially in the 2000s, like, you know, like, skinny was in, baby, supermodels, all of that. So if you had any ounce of hips on you, like a little bit of extra thigh, you was fat. Like, you was fat, you were big, you were like big as a house. Like, I mean, you heard all the things. I really didn't hear it. Again, I think I heard it from women and older women more, and of course, you know, the cat calling by men, things like that. But I think that definitely does do something to you mentally and emotionally, especially when you're young like that. And a lot of times you don't have control. Because for me, I'm like, I was small, so I didn't have control over how my body decided it wanted to develop. And it's also very, it's genetics. So, and my mom, I think, she was skinny all her life. She was a size 0 until she had kids. So, you know, my aunts and things like that. So they didn't know like what to do, how to manage that, because they, like, you know, they were size 0s. So I think also not having a parent that has the capacity to help you through that. And so my mom had 3 daughters too. So like, we all, you know, hit a growth spurt and our bodies developed the way it did. But it's also due to genetics, because it runs on both sides of my family. So but I can think about that being something as well. So also, if you're like, I don't know if I want to put that up, like, girl, put that down. Like, put that down. That's important to know. That's important to highlight. And it's also important for you to accept. I'm not saying accept that the abuse, the sexualization, accept that all of those things, the bullying and things was okay, but accept that, like, okay, yes, that did happen to me, because I know that sometimes you can disassociate from it mentally, emotionally. And so we're wanting to just accept that it happened, and also write that down, because that is going to be so important and pivotal. So if you have any body image issues, any things that you reject about your body physically, We talked about the intro stuff, like the introspective stuff, like this part, the inside. But let's also talk about the physical part. And so that question was like, do you like yourself when you're stripped naked? If you're saying no, that's okay. Write down why. And if that was influenced by someone in your school, if that was influenced by your family, because I don't know about you, but if you're from the South, and especially when like family reunions and stuff like that, or holidays, like they have no shame. Like if you look bigger than you did last year, or if you look like you put on some weight, they're gonna tell you. You know what I mean? If there's something wrong with your eye, they're gonna tell you. And so we may not say that stuff, and we kind of might like laugh and joke and, you know, joke about it and whatever. But no, that stuff actually does stick with you though. It absolutely sticks with you. So write that down, because that is that thought, that rejection, that hate, that insecure, it's insecurity. And it's not your fault that you're insecure in that area. It was shaped and molded and formed through somebody else's skewed perception. And so write that down, because that's going to be important, especially when you talk about modesty, because it's not, again, just the clothes. Like this is internal work. And whatever you don't like about yourself internally and also externally, especially when you're talking about body image and identity and things like that, that all morphs, and that shows in how you present yourself. That shows in how you really show up in places and spaces. That shows in so many ways. And so it's important to write that down. It's important to let's identify that now. Like let's identify it in this stage, and let's accept that it happened, meaning like I'm gonna accept that yes, this might have happened to me, and I'm also identifying and assessing like how I felt, the views that I took on from this, and like how this morphed, and I would say even the consequence of it, because the consequence of that being in your life meant now that maybe you shied away from doing certain things. I know some people shied away from doing sports. You know, even me, I was told, oh girl, I don't think you should do volleyball because it's short. But I play volleyball because I was like, okay, so I'm not about to be hating these thighs, okay? Like these thighs is thick, baby. I'm not about to be hating these. Like they not going nowhere. There's none amount of exercise I can get rid of these thick thighs. So I used volleyball as a way of self-acceptance, especially in my body. Because to be able to wear some shorts like that to reveal parts of my body that I was told was ugly or disgrace, it really helped me. And so maybe somebody may not be like that though. You might cover yourself in a certain way, or you might have to wear certain clothes that cover different parts of your body. All of those things, write those down, because it's really important. It's so important. And as you're on this journey, we're continuing to uncover all of these things, it'll all make sense. And then also we are going to overcome this with this journey. This journey of modesty is really overcoming of the things, overcoming and removing layers that were put on us, and we carry that it was not for us to carry. You know, it was not for us to use that as clothing. Like, no, like that was not meant for our body to be talked about in that way, nor was it meant for you to carry that burden of hate towards yourself. So it's time to identify, okay? And then so the last prompt in this is, okay, the things you reject about yourself, right? And why you don't like them. And then we moved into, is this influenced by society? So those things, all of that we've identified. Now, is this hurting your growth? So what you've identified that you don't like about yourself and that you reject, and if it was influenced by society, and who it was influenced by, and like what may have happened, right? Now, with identifying that, is that specific thing hurting your growth? And if you say yes, in what way is it hurting your growth? And then even if you say no, okay, so how do you know that it's not impacting or hurting your growth? And the growth could also be, because sometimes we think growth, we always think like there's an outward expression of growth, but sometimes it's like growth is inward. Like sometimes I will notice based if something happened or something that I'm like, oh, it like 3 weeks later, I'm like, oh, you know what? I didn't handle that like how I knew I would, like 3 years ago I would handle. Like, and I identify, oh, I grew in that area. So it might be something you need to like really think about in terms of like growth, and not just external growth, but also just like the internal. And then also we know the things we hold, we know the things we carry, we know the things that we say over and over that we want to get rid of or stop doing. We know all those habits and things like that. And so it could also just be a habit that has formed, and you know if it's hurting your growth. And also think about too, like if this wasn't, and if you're like, no, or I'm not sure, think about like, okay, if this wasn't present at all, like what would life be? Like, how would I think? How would I move? Like, how would I show up if this wasn't present? So that's also a way that you can think about it to determine if you're going down your list, if that specifically is hurting your growth. So I'll give you a little time. Okay, so that is the final prompt. And that one's a little long because it really does dive into the depth of who you are. So it goes back to that first question. And then also, while you're doing these and answering these questions, if you find yourself, even through like, if you've gone through all the prompts and you're like, wow, like, I didn't even know this about myself. You might need to even go back up to the first prompt, which is who are you? And maybe even redefine or write or rewrite some things that might come from you answering the other prompts. And I think also too, in that question, which I should have probably said, like, don't put like who you want to be. I want you in that first question of who are you, to put like who you are right now. Right? Not like who you want to be, because we'll do that in a whole other part and section. This is like who you are right now. What do you identify the most with about who you are? So that is the first part of the journey. I always say like the foundation part is the part that I'm not going to say it sucks. I'm just going to say it may not feel good. Because you're always thinking about the things that impact you the most. And then also some of the stuff that you may uncover just may not feel good. And it may be stuff you already know, but then to be able to really put it on paper, look at it and realize like, okay, this is still a thing. You know what I mean? Like that. And just the realization, like, your list may be long, and that might make you feel some type of way, but it's okay, because now that we've identified the things, now that we really identified like where you were at and the things, and how they may have showed up, what may have happened, if it's impacting your growth, like we've identified the foundation of the things that we are going to fix and transform throughout this journey. And so again, be as detailed, be as vulnerable. I'm not going to ask you. I mean, feel free to share if you would like. However, I'm not going to ask you, because again, this is your own personal journey. And so, this is in relation to you. And so, yeah, so you can share if you'd like though. I would love to hear, even if you want to private message me. But this is for you to know. And then this session is going to be the guiding that we use for all the sessions that come after it. And so take your time with it, sit with this as long as you need, get the true clarity that you need. And sometimes that means sitting in silence. Sometimes that means not trying to get this done in a weekend or in a day, and actually setting aside time to work through these prompts and to really answer these questions to the best of your ability. So this is the end of our session, and I will see you next Wednesday for our third live teaching. You will see the promotions for that, and we will be on our part 2 of this journey series next month, February. So thank you for your time. If you have any other questions or need my assistance in this journey, feel free to message me or leave a comment, and I'll talk to you later.